Calvin T. Mann, leading EMIY, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to EMIY TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
What up, what up, what up, what up? What's popping? What's happening? What's going on? What's new? What's old? What's all of that? In the building. What does in the building actually mean, Monique? Like I'm actually in the building, or is that like my presence are felt, right?
Yes.
Right. So today our discussion is going to be an interesting one, because a lot of times we do not think like this. We talk, but we don't necessarily think like this, right? We say things, but we don't necessarily think like this, right? Because usually when you have a thought, and words, deeds, and actions have to line up. And today we're going to share, I'm going to share 5 ingredients for the restoration, I guess, of families. And if you want to, you can call in. As I'm going through this process, you can call in at 313-266. I got that right? 266-1128.
No. 2811.
2811.
Yes.
Got it backwards. Okay. 2811. And we gonna get right into this, but it's funny. I always got a story, Monique. It comes with, like, today. I had an interview this morning with the state rep, right? And it's funny how, you know, this interview, so to speak, right? Lately I've been doing more and more interviews because I'm just trying to raise the volume on boys and suicide. You know, a lot of times, you know, we can downplay ourselves and not really. I know I'm dope. I was dope before I started this work. I was always dope. I've been dope since a little boy, right? And so God just gave me purpose to make my dopeness even greater, right? So that's enough for me to, enough for me to swag a little bit, you know, just pause. But in this conversation, right, and lately this has been my thing. In this conversation, right, we look around America, right, we look around our neighborhoods, we look around communities, and we look around the various counties, right? And so you got the government, then you got the lower government, then you got the county government, you know, you got the governor government, you got the state government, you got all these governments, right? One governs the other, applies, whatever the case may be. When I was in school, I was graduating high school at Ferndale High School. When I graduated, I happened to go back to school to pick some up, and my history teacher, Miss Jorgensen, she was an older white woman, as my history teacher, right, at the school. And so, you know, I just went in and said back, because she always had a way of teaching history. And she sat me down and she said, you know, Calvin, man, I got to share something with you because you have a different mind than everybody else. Columbus, you're going to learn when you go to college that Columbus was a cannibal. Like, Columbus really didn't discover America. This is the lie they tell. This is part of what my job is, to teach this, right? This was back in the 80s, right? Miss Jorgensen was a sweet person, right? But she was the one that put me up on, and it was enlightening. So when I get to school, of course I got kicked out of college, but when I get to college, right, one of the classes I take, again, is about history, right? How do I get in to this class. So I'm in this class. I would show up to my history class in my pajamas. You hear me? Like I'm running to the history course at college, and my ethical perspectives. I'll never forget the two courses, right? And then when I got kicked out, a friend of mine, she took me to Special Olympics. So I was 19 when she took me to Special Olympics. And I saw Special Olympics, but I saw the dynamic, right, over the years as I got further into community help, coaching. I saw the dynamic shift. I've been in the middle of this to watch the dynamic shift. So I've seen where we were starting to get away from family. Then I saw where we got completely away from family. And, now I see the direction of where we headed, which is why the house is divided. So for me, it was simple. Right? Everybody doesn't like these serious conversations. Let's be real. I can come in here and talk sex. I can come in here and talk. We could talk about booty. We could talk about. Movie stars. We could talk about. There are a lot of things we could talk about that don't mean absolutely nothing to moving and solving issues. We can talk about. How we dress. We can talk about where the dress come from, right? It still doesn't solve our children, our families having a place in a space to be successful, right? And so I say that because I'm going to get these 5 ingredients, but back to the interview. I took you around to take you back to the interview. So the interview, as I'm talking, and where you get your perspective from. Well, experience, right? And so I made it simple. As the room is full of white people and black people, and there are different people in the room. As I'm doing this interview, and I said, America needs to understand. I want to be clear. We were called the United. Right? Get the word united. United means come together, is together, be together. So it's fraudulent if we say that we're united, but we only work with certain people. That's fraudulent, right? We said that we were united, but we're constantly attacking the African American community by playing these games. We're constantly self-attacking within the African American community, and we rely upon the position that we think that the African American community is in. Although we have tons of success, we spend more time wallowing in the failure than we do acknowledging the success, right? So families, right? Yesterday, the little article got hit. I get tagged to this article that was wrote by Tallahassee Coates back in 2015, where he went in and talked to his professor. His professor expounded on how the black family was under attack, and he said how the women's lib and things like that would have an attack on the black family, because what they were going to see is that the United States was more comfortable at hiring the black woman and then diminishing the black. And as we were going through that, I said, bang, right? As I go through the reading, I said we would go on to develop. So I kind of finished what he was talking about, but it was an article. I said we would go on to develop these syndromes of acceptable privilege in culture, right? Which means she knows how much privilege she has, and she uses that to help diminish him. He knows he doesn't really have a whole lot of privilege. The only privilege that he has is exercising his maleism. The man only has his maleism to exercise that's in a privileged format, right? So I went through all these trainings about, healthy masculinity and things like that. Healthy masculinity is fatherhood. So let's be clear, right? Healthy masculinity is how we address and talk to each other, right? But I didn't need nobody to tell me that, right? that we were already practicing healthy masculinity. Now, the healthy masculinity means not referring to women as bees and things like that, or telling the boy, you're going to be like, don't be like a girl, as if girls are, soft or whatever. Well, let's take a look, right? 5 ingredients. And so I say all that to say, when I addressed the United, and then I said states. So, but yet the states in the United are divided. You have blue states and you have red states. You have blue states where you say it's just where it's black, right? 72% of the single household. We keep up with that rate through the blue states. You see what I'm saying? So because you went into the government, you signed up, you got these, he said it would make them complacent, right? That somehow by depending on the government, that the culture would become complacent, right? So, okay, but he left out in this conversation, so I added on to his conversation that white people are on welfare more than black people, right? So that's a whole nother dynamic, right? And so these are the things that we like to talk when we talk privilege and we talk escape artists, right? So I explained, I said, so even Thomas Sowell is a black guy who speaks and rolls with Republican. We recently seen a video where a guy was sitting on Dr. Phil talking about, he wasn't saying save black kids, he was saying save white kids. He was blacker than me and you, right? But again, if I leave you in a culture, you will adapt. You see what I'm saying? So if I leave you in a racist culture, you will adapt to a racist mindset and a racist culture. It doesn't. The comedian did something about it when they played blind. When my man came out and played, he was at the Ku Klux Klan rally, but he was blind, and he was talking about black people. Right? Same thing. So people refer to these guys coons and things like that. No, what is happening is they were educated in an environment that was against them, so their fear forced them into a mindset of adapting in the culture. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I believe somewhere along the line I am Dr. Man, right? So that's just ego if you want to look at it. But in the process, I did a lot of research. I'm constantly researching this dynamic. So that brings us to the 5 ingredients, right? Because as I said to her, America cannot be saved with racism, because racism is what got America in this position. You see what I'm saying? Because America likes to deny that there is no racism, but racism is what got America in this position. Racism only gets 10% or 15% from the African American culture, who literally, right, invented from the turn of the century all these great things. But again, racism likes to hide behind lies as if it's the truth. And when you do that, the Bible says it'll never leave your house. Welcome to America. So America now, strategically across the globe, nobody really wants to mess with America, because America cannot talk about any other country and the atrocities of these other countries based upon how they've treated their own. So that's my spiel. That's the little horn I'm blowing. But I'm going to give you these 5 things because I think it's important that we talk about these 5 things, right? And to be honest with you, it is hilarious, right, that the very first thing is on the list is fatherhood. Dun, 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 dun. Put your cape on, daddy. Put your capes on, daddy, because this is it right here. So, fatherhood. How do we look at fatherhood? What does we seem like? Dad, right? So the picture of fatherhood as an ingredient to restore families. Every school, here's a perfect example. Every school might have 1 or 2 male teachers now. Why? Because we've run off that we've told men that their only value is a discipline. So I'm gonna send you to your daddy, right? When I was growing up, it was my grandfather. You knew if you call your grandfather, if I call my granddaddy, Square George McNeil Sr., if you call him, it was on, right? He was the overseer, the Don Dada, right? But through that, even in his household, he had kids that was left to stay at home model, right? So my grandmother stayed at home. So in the stay at home model that we quote unquote said was more successful, I had a couple of uncles that went off to the military, was sick, the whole nine. Drugs, pimping. You see what I'm saying? So we had to take a look at that, right? So fatherhood, though, what we discovered was because he was there, everyone still got, because he remained in, they still got a certain amount of discipline and things that they wanted to achieve. That family produced hundreds, right? Because my grandfather was still there. My grandmother preceded my grandfather in death. My grandfather was still there. My great-grandfather preceded my grandmother in death. My great-grandmother, this runs the gambit, but they're there, right? So then we fast forward, right? In 65, they launched the Welfare Act, the Food Stamp Act in 64. In 65, it was the Juvenile Act. So the Juvenile Act really sets up how juveniles operate today. You see what I'm saying? So they made sure in this dynamic that during this time, what were they attacking? They were attacking the father. Now, let's go back prior to, right? They already had the formula because they did that to the Indians. See, we attacked the male to have access to the female to continue the process, and we fail for it, and we participate in it, and that melanin has got to stay home. Just as they're fighting for theirs to stay home, the melanin has to stay home. So fatherhood is a way for our children's families, children's children, right, to help restore the home. We have to value that. So we didn't value, so we can't listen. You understand? So I can't listen to you, Dad. All right, like the TV shows tell me you're not even here. You're silly. You're buffoon. You're right. This is what the TV shows have shown about fatherhood. Right. So then you get into good TV shows, then it's always about the fatherhood having to comply and forgive. But here's the truth about fatherhood. If you want success for your children, across the board, you must incorporate the biological father. Why? The biological father knows his seed. We have disrespected the father in understanding that the father knows his seed. So the first thing to restore family is to restore the value of fatherhood. Because fatherhood is such an impact on your life if you have not been paying attention. Because these boys and these men don't have fathers, they die faster and earlier. So when a father is involved in his child's life, the child lives longer. The system doesn't have to work so hard if I remove that father. Your compliance with the system helps remove the father, and it puts the father in dire straits, because how many jobs can I get? In the 70s, we couldn't get them jobs. And the criminal, Ronald Reagan, the criminal, that all of these guys, Republicans, even Thomas Sowell, I would love to have a conversation, because you ignore this very statistic. In 1969, then criminal Ronald Reagan had a plan. We're going to sign the No-Fault Divorce Act, destabilize the home, get on the phone in 1972 with Nixon, talk about the black community. This is what they did, right? And then after they did that, we slid in more dope. And so Nixon, who lost his thing, his position because he was criminal, right? Then everyone bought into this Ronald Reagan thing because Ronald Reagan, right, could bring a certain thing. Because if I bring you hysteria, if I bring you problems, the white culture is more likely to say, hey, look at them, you see? So, but in the process, Bill Cosby come along with fatherhood. Now, what do we do again? We turn around and attack fatherhood again, right? This time we attack fatherhood with Me Tooism. But you cannot have a family. Understand that. Even in the gender conversations and everything, someone has to play the role of the male. Now, you don't have the same thing as a male. But you have to play a role as a man. So that means you got to be protective. There's a big difference, though. Fatherhood brings value. So when a father is involved in his child's life from birth to 9, the child lives longer. When a father is involved in a child's life from 0 to 3, the father never leaves his child. He fights and fights and fights and fights because he's fighting the system and you. At the expense that our boys are headed and navigated right into the pipeline, straight into the streets, right into these prisons. And now they on T-shirts because we have another way of celebrating you by putting you on a T-shirt after you done died. What a horrible thing. So if we then value fatherhood, if even the men who didn't have their fathers begin to understand and value their brother and value the father, that is the number one way that we can restore family, restore the value to the father, and listen. Because if you think you know more than the father, he listens just as much as you might read. We are listeners, processors. We hear everything you say. So when you call, when you say something out of line, we recorded it. So then when you come to try to attack us, the first thing we going to say is, well, first of all, you never listened to me. And now you have to listen because you done bumped your head 1,000 times. The government only wanted y'all, women, in the economy because y'all spend money. The man going to tell you how to save it. You see, so then there's a whole nother dynamic, but that's where fatherhood has to be valued because he's a protector, he's a provider, he's a presenter, he's a positioner, he's a propagander, he's also he's papa. You see, these are things that when you start talking about peas and men, we love that. So when we put them peas together for a man, we love that, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. So fatherhood is the first thing you need to restore family, right? It takes 12 mentors to equal one father. Y'all better wake up and stop taking these babies away from their daddies. So that's the one. The second one that we're going to discuss is the value-based parenting, right? So value-based parenting, what are your values, right? What are your standards? For us is, it's funny, but it's a bunch of us. So, my mom and dad divorced. I was young. I was the one that grabbed my thing. I'm ready to run away because I was my daddy's boy. You see what I'm saying? I'm dragging, where my daddy at, and I was my daddy's guy. And I didn't know that until 2 years ago when my brother's godfather, who used to play the organ for my daddy, told me that my daddy took me everywhere, dressed me up. Out of all the kids, I was his favorite. That's how he carried me, right? So that was amazing to learn. But the values of the family, what are your values? In some homes you see, as for me and mine, we are going to serve the Lord, right? So religion is one of the values that a lot of families hang on to, right? What are your values? We are only, for me, we are only dating people who come from two-parent households. One of my values that was in the house, there was no dating till you were 16. Because I think if you wait till you're 16, your mind is in a different place. I know if you get loose at 14, it's over, right? I experienced that myself. I was loose at 14. It was over. 12, 13, 14, it was on, right? Because I didn't have that male guidance, right? So my dad wasn't in like that. He wasn't consistent, but I had brothers, so I could mimic them, you know what I mean? But my brothers and I, we had a lot of our daddies in us, so that was a whole nother thing that my mother and a lot of women had to deal with, you hear me? So that process at me was, okay, I'm going to set the standard. My kids can't date till they're 16. Now, if I can't give them nothing else, I can give them that, right? I can show them why it's so important, right? So what are your family values? How do you, where do you go? Do you stay the night at anybody's house? right? What are your family values? Do you smoke weed in front of your kids or turn up in front of your kids? What are your family values that your child, when they leave the house, that they could mimic in the proper direction? Ours was respect. We always had to have respect, right? This is why we do Respect Day. We always had to have respect for the adults in our life. I could get my head slapped off if I was disrespectful to an adult. Today, these kids don't understand that because it's not being taught. What's being taught is disrespectful behavior being acceptable behavior and not. And so we got a big disconnect between the seniors and the youth. The seniors has the wisdom. The seniors got the wisdom. These kids, I used to go sit on Mr. Cecil porch, Mr. Thornton, talk to all these men. These kids don't do that. And the seniors are scared of the kids because the kids always looking to do something they ain't got no business. Taking, disrespect, because they don't have no values. So you can't get nothing. These kids don't even know their grandparents. You hear me? Like, have not sat down to talk to their grandparents, right? So how do you increase those values? You got to get to the grandparent and the parents, and you got to have family meetings. See, when you have family meetings, you can set standards and values. What are we doing? What's school like? Who's the teachers? How they're treating you? Where are your friends? Family meetings is a way to establish family values. You got to be able to be in there. But today we like to chase behind YouTube and turn it up. Like we gonna get high in front of our kid. Oh yeah, I want my kid to go out there and smoke weed. They're gonna smoke weed with me. That's immaturity. It's not a value. It's immaturity. It is not a value. That immaturity impacts that child into his or her immaturity. So then they become disrespectful because now you on the friend level because you talking to them like and you think that's cute. Right? You see this consistently. Having a relationship, we gonna struggle. So you have this relationship with this child that you give weak, you getting high. Let them get to adulthood. Give them a chance. Right? And that's another area that we can value. Stop pulling our kids up to school smelling like weed. Give them a value, not a volume, not a joint, not a high. Give them a value, a standard for which they can, instead of giving them that old racism talk. Oh man, the white people, so and so. You teaching them to be a victim. You see what I'm saying? Stop giving them that. You know what I mean? Teach them and prepare them how to deal with racism instead of you keep preaching that they can't get up from it because you are surrendering. And this is on both sides. Racist people, you're surrendering your child to an ideology that is only going to cause harm in their life. While you're teaching these things, this is not a value. It's only going to cause harm. You're going to say the wrong thing to a white person or you're going to say the wrong thing to a black person, and it's going to ignite the ism that's already in your DNA. Your great-great-grandfather going to be ignited. That's all this criminal did in 2016 when he ran for president. Oh, we can say what we want to say. You see? The ignorance of it all. So family values have to be established. You have to set a standard for how you do everything. And here's a little tidbit. Add to your home. Turn your home into an affirmation. Establish a positive affirmation for your child so when they walk through the door, they know that this is home. And this is what's going to take place in the home. And my home is called the House of Can. When we walk through the door, there ain't nothing we can't do. Period. It is House of Can. We don't bring the doubt in the door at all. And when we deal with it together, or we going to pray about it. But that value, that piece is a value add to your home. Create a affirmation for your home. That's what we do. So that's 2. Number 3. I'm doing good. Yeah. Right. Number 3, knowing the needs of every family member. We're all different. All my kids are different because they bear the mark of where I was when they were conceived. It is amazing that all my children are different. I mean, different. My daughter is different from my sons. My sons are different, each one of them, and they all. It is amazing to watch. It's an amazing thing to watch. But you have to know the difference of each child, each family member. My brothers are different. All of my brothers are different. We have a lot of ways alike, but we're all different. They wouldn't do what I do. I might not do what they do, right? It's just who we are. We bear the mark of where our parents are at the time we are conceived. So just imagine that. Just think about that. Where our parents conceived us is the mark that we bear in life. This summer, I'm dropping a song called We Got to Help. My daddy wrote that song years ago, and in 75 released a song. We grabbed it. My son gonna be on it. My brother is on it. Myself, I'm on it. We got to help, right? But what's funny is I was born in 1965. I don't mean to tell my age, but I look good for it. So they might as well get used to it. So I was born in 65. My dad, my mom, then was on something completely different when they had me. Because I always been on something different as a youngster. When I'm talking about 8, I go out the house and was teaching neighbors, even younger than 8, teaching kids dance routines. I was down the street with kids in my underwear, and I get in trouble because I bust out the house at any moment in my drawers, as a little boy. I don't know what that was about, but I bust out the house in my drawers as a little boy and a little chubby boy and go down the street and play with the kids and get in trouble for being in my drawers. So I finally started wearing clothes, So my mother had to take me to Brody's. Brody's was for the husky boys. I was a chubby boy, right? But that dynamic plays out, Why? Because when I got to middle school, I could sing. So where did I learn that from? I could always sing. Because my parents both sang. So then when I got to high school, me and my brother was in high school. My brother me and my brother ended up putting on concerts together. We singing. Right? When I left high school, my senior year, I had my own band. Going all around Oakland County. So I always been, right, about what was in my DNA. I just needed someone, a male like me, someone who cared about my vision to cultivate that. But knowing that the kids are different, you have to carve out special time for each kid. Why? Because you don't want the kid to feel like you left them out. So you got to give each kid a certain amount of time. And you have to listen to the kids because we're all different. And in your families, your auntie is different from your uncle. You got a completely different relationship. You still got to get to learn both because you never know where God plants that seed of wisdom that'll redirect your life. We forget those things. You see, we forget those things because those things, we get into the attack mode, or we be done heard something from somebody else, and now we hating on this person, or we this, or because we were making all these mistakes from absent fatherhood. All this is from absent fatherhood. I don't care what they say. They can dress it up all they want to. Fatherhood is God, and you're gonna get that work real soon. So, know exactly, right, what each member, who they are and what they like. You got to know that. You got to know what each member, each brother, each sister, each cousin, each uncle, each aunt, this is family. You see, this is family. And the problem is that family, it got abandoned. It got tossed up. You sold out for a check that was temporary, that caused a whole bunch of damage, where poverty was increased. When we bought into the player and the procrastinator and the pimping. We let them dictate to us to take us away from our creativity. Get out of that racism, get out of that space and lead. Stop participating in that buffoonery. Lead them people where they are. Racist people, they gonna try and talk because they ain't got nothing else. The same thing is happening to them that is happening to you. They're fatherless, they broke, They don't. Dr. Warren Farrell called it dead deprived. There are millions of children in the United States who are dead deprived children. Of all the dead deprived children, majority of them have been, when you go and check the statistics on the mass shooters, drive-by shooters, and all the shooters in this country, they're dead deprived. You see? There are studies that show when the father stayed home, the kids are better off than when the mother stayed home. There are studies that show when the father is involved at the school, the kids perform at a higher level. Studies show that when the father is present in his daughter's life, she don't have her period early. There are so many studies now about the value of fathers. The problem is that we have tons of privilege in areas that are destructive to the family. So know each and every member. That is a real deal. I love my brothers. I tell you, I call them, and my kids, I call them and crack jokes, and I don't care if you don't like me or not. I don't care. Dad, I ain't feeling you today. Okay, peace. I'll holler at you in a minute. You know what I mean? I ain't here to be your friend. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people go out their way for that one. I'm going to be friends with my kid. Beat it. Here's one. This is a tough one. Building the family economy. What do you know? So recently, I'll give you a great idea. Recently, in our mentoring program, we went to the 14 to 24s. I brought in one of my former guys, Joe Samples, who came out when my little brother came out, graduated out of high school. He's a financial guy. Of course, I'm going to play with my own. Period. So that's my baby. So Joe comes in, presents to the kids. We teaching the kids, financial literacy. We teaching kids how to invest, where to put their money, right? But we brought them in also to talk to the families. Now, when Joe came in to talk to the families, we talking about financial literacy and where you can do something as simple as a mutual fund. Right, that you can invest in $50 a month. So what I do, I called my son. I went and picked up my 19-year-old, brought him to the last day. As I was signing up, here, you need to sign up. I turned my son on to the tax guy. Turned my daughter and my other son on to the tax guy. Now, if you don't use it, you don't use it. But here's the thing. I've been doing stocks for so long that I'm putting that into play now. These kids are still looking at stars, right? They don't get access to the underneath, the people that's not on TV, that's making millions of dollars and are successful outside of them having to have a Bentley or Benz. They are only indoctrinated by the television, the screen, right? So Dr. Warren Farrell also touched on to a number of things. A number of doctors tell you, reduce the screen time because cognitively it impacts you to destroy you. Your cognitive ability is under attack every day, right? So your financials, where are you at? So you see people online, they done bought into annuities, they going into properties, people are going after money. Yeah, but money has a priority. It's a resource. It is not family. If you put money above family, you are going to be alone. Period. Understand, if you put money above family, you are going to be alone. And I know you might not care because you might have all this money and you cool with that, right? But when that casket closed, you can't take it with you. So then what you didn't put in place, what you don't have, is that you've left your family abandoned with no economic structure. Right. So that's the one thing that when me and the Rose got together, that's the one thing that we worked on, including setting up our own. We're going to set up our own bunch of stuff. I don't need to tell you all them plans, but we setting up a bunch of things to make sure that after we're gone, our families have access. Right. Because that's important. Right. But your financial structure to your family is not just dead. The wife has a calling as well. Sometimes the wife has just as smart and just as good financially. Sometimes we as men need to understand it has no bearing. If you make money your highest priority, you will be alone. You got to have family, and a wife is everything. So if the wife is sitting there and she's on point, because we know not all these women are on point. I don't care how they say. They can say what they want to say. Oh, I'm a woman. Just because you're a woman don't mean you're a good one or one worth having. And it's the same thing for a man. And if a man is like we teach our boys, if you're not in a position of leadership, it's going to be hard for her to be herself. But if you got a partner and you treat that partner with respect and kindness and love, she can blossom. If she is a stud, a star, if she's got purpose, she's winning. My job is to enhance, encourage, empower her to go. My job is not to reduce her to this little bitty ant next to me and me stand over her and tell her, this is what I told you and this is how I feel. No, we got to grow up because God has given a vision to women as well. Period. Right? So economically, we have to be able to listen to each other. So here's a little tidbit. Once a month, sit down, or you can do it every pay period. But sit down and go through your economics. Go through your bills. Make sure that you're teaching the kids bills and things like that. Have these conversations about your investments, where you did invest. Make sure that you're teaching these things, because if you're not economically teaching these things, you're sending your kids out here to the wolves. They're going to the wolves. And so it's difficult when you're not in the house to teach. I struggle with this one. I struggled big time, right? But I was always talking about what they could do. My 401k, how I had a very successful 401k. How do we move money? So you got to pay attention. So you got this job, go look at your 401k, right? Make sure that you put this much in that 401k and then get you some insurance outside of that, and then turn around. Let's look at some other ways of investing, but put you some more money in a mutual fund. Mutual fund has never gone down across the board since the Depression. You can always make money with the mutual fund, period. So, economics, family economics, you have to be on point with that, and we have to make sure that we are doing this together. Again, we're talking about restoring families. That was the what was that, the third or the fourth ingredient? That was the fourth ingredient. Here's number 5. Right? Number 5. You got to go through each one of these ingredients every day. Make sure that you're practicing these things with your families. I don't know what else to say, right? But you have to put these things in motion. Your family trauma is created by the absence of the male figure. Family trauma is created because the male figure didn't get proper context or no telling where he was conceived and what he was on. The family context, meaning mom, sister, auntie, they have their in-house role model. So they are taking full advantage of the system and understanding because of that system and the way they set it up. The object is the problem is in the 50s, we took women who didn't have jobs. In the 50s, we would grab women and gave them an opportunity to be a wife. Right? In the 70s and the 80s, we spent dope money to educate sisters. A lot of sisters got dope money education. Right? 90s, dudes was putting up money for their woman to go through. A lot of dudes put the woman in front because they saw that the system was doing so. But what did we get in return? Boy, bye. Right? We got this diagnose where just because he a janitor, I ain't marrying him. He not on my level financially. So that's what the television has done again, impacted you. So now you hit the crossover. Now you over in the crossover and that melanin is gone. It's the same game plan from what they did to the Indians. We got to wake up on our own too. We got to. Your children, our children, leads their families. And we got to understand that in this ingredient, marriage has to be on the table and you got to lock in. Men, you are not the only one that cheat. Do not bear that cross. Do not accept that cultural acceptance that you cheat more than they do. Don't do that. The object is to make sure that you don't cheat and you're in your family, you're in your home, and you're doing the things that you need to do. It's just that important, right? Two heads have always been better than one. Always. Yeah, two heads come together. He say when one or two come together, I am in the midst. Hey, we can take it back that if y'all want to have the discussion about the Bible before the Bible and Osiris. You could take it back before that if you want to talk about energy. We can do that. But more importantly, it has to have an order. We have to have order. You are out of order. The B comes before the G. The F comes before the M. The M comes before the W. I mean, order. Nah, y'all can play all them other games. That's on y'all. I'm telling you where I'm at. This is where you will find me. Boys, men, husbands, and fathers. I'm in my lane. I'm in order to the restoration of family. I grew up that way. You can't change that. I can't change that. This is how I grew up. I grew up watching married men take care of their families. Mr. Cecil, Sonny Man, Mike. Mike was a single father. I never saw a mother over there with Mike. This in the 70s as a little boy. Mr. Thomas on the corner. The Hunts. Like, Mr. Cecil was in a 2-family flat with a construction company. So my aunt was on the bottom and he was on the top. And he had kids. But Mr. Cecil was out here doing what he's supposed to do. He was being punished by people. You imagine how hard it would be in the 70s for a man to be trying to do his own construction company and getting access to cement when everybody had sold out already. Can you imagine how hard that was? And then the people to turn on him. Can you imagine how many men who wives and girlfriends and people turned on them when they was down? Didn't offer nothing to help them get up, pointed the finger, kicked them, stepped on them. You ain't this and you ain't that. Can you imagine? That is in the children. That's in the children. So we have to adapt these 5 ingredients to reestablish. Is take it from today. Put your family first. Is everything. Fight for it. I fight for mine. Yesterday I'm laying. This is on everything. It's Easter. My son, he went to church, the oldest one, but he was coming to barbecue, didn't show. My daughter showed up at 7. She came, got some of that barbecue. She brought my grandson. My younger son went to work. He got off of work. Hey, Dad, just called. Didn't ask for nothing. Just called. Hey, Dad, what's up? Oh, man, just getting off of work. Now, I can tell you, that been a second. But here was a holiday and they all checked in. Why? Because I consistently check in. This might be the only thing that we have. But they know in everything they are with me. Family. My brothers, June 22nd, family. My brothers from other mothers, April 29th, family. I get it. I'm going to continuously paint this picture. And for me, that's everything. I got brothers in Oakland County. I'm going to paint this picture of family consistently. I think it's important enough for us to become united. I think it's enough. I think it's important. Right? And so I close I'm gonna close with something simple. And again, shout out to podcasting and our Smash Suicide campaign and the Rise and Grind Morning Show and Miles and the Rose and Dave, the mentoring program, all the parents that give us opportunity to pour into their children and them buy into the message of family. So that's another extended family. We're looking to take that family to Kentucky on May 20th. We got to raise some more money, but family, right? Treat these kids, like family. Today we're going to love on them at the mentoring program. But I got to tell you, it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking that today, of all days, we had another mass shooting. There have been 132 mass shootings this year. We have gotten to the place to where we see a lot of lies. And people are waking up to the truth with broken hearts. And you got people out here defending and acting off of the lies that we have told in this country. We literally have told in this country lie after lie. We lie about history. We lie about buildings. We lie about people. We've lied about... we lied about wars. We took lives for a lie. Greed. We lie about who we gonna prosecute. We lie about who we don't prosecute. We justify incarcerating. Literally. Boy didn't have nothing to do with a break-in. The judge gave him 65 years. The boy drove around in a car, white kid. He didn't even do 3. Same judge. But the black boy, he wanted to give him 65 years. They fought to reduce it to 30. These are the people that in position that honestly, if there was ever something that we needed, we need to execute those who have lied, because you've taken lives. See, when you take somebody's life through these lies and these policies, there's no repercussion. It's able to get off because you can go hide behind the cloak of Christianity and say, oh, Jesus forgave me. But that's something you said. As a man, it's going to be very difficult for somebody to forgive you for murdering their child or incarcerating their child and throwing them away like this. But yet and still y'all yell and scream about abortions and things like that, right? We got a lot of issues in this country from lies, a lot of lies. So I say all that to say I'm going to stay in my lane, right? Your families are everything. Protect them at all costs. Pull them in, teach them, give back, show them how to give back. Remember the principles. Value your fathers. And these fathers is a lot of wisdom. And y'all need to listen to them. That's wives, girlfriends, daughters. There are a lot of wisdom. Men, be on your shit when you're talking to these people. When you're talking to your daughters and you're talking to stop playing with people's emotions. You're making it hard on a lot of other men. You make the system work against you when you do that. With that being said, you can reach me at EMIWorld.com or GoodFathersOnly.com. We getting there, y'all. Really appreciate it. I'm willing to go to bat. But what you got to do is put your families first. Peace.